Hannah Batsel. I'm a book artist and a printmaker, and I'm here at Ashantilly Press doing an artist residency. So it's kind of a 3-week chance to really focus in on work, to kind of take in the environment around here, and I guess get inspired to create either a project or a little series of projects. So the project that I am working on is I call it a book. Some might call it, I don't know, a broadside or something along those lines. But it's a little tiny book project that opens up and has movable parts, as a lot of my projects tend to do. And I'm hoping, we'll see, fingers crossed, that at the end, when everything is printed up and bound for real, when you open up this book, a bunch of little creatures in these holes will kind of scatter as you open the book. So what I'm doing right now is carving this image into a linoleum block. The image itself is an ink drawing that I did. This is the original ink drawing. And I essentially transfer this ink drawing onto the block with some very noxious solvents. And I get this, kind of guide to help me with my carving. I'm using these wood carving tools to carve it. And eventually I will end up printing this on the printing presses here at Ashantilly. The type of press that I use is called a Vandercook. We've got a Vandercook Universal 1 here. And it's a relief process. So that means that the surface of this block is going to be covered in ink, and then paper is going to be rolled over it, and it will get an impression that will create our image. The pages of the book so far don't really look like much of anything. The downside to making a lot of movable books with a lot of moving parts in them is that the pages themselves, when printed flat, are very kind of confusing and disjointed. But this is going to be the left side of the book. Here we'll have half of a little poem that I wrote, some foliage, and then all of this kind of confusing lines and jaggedy cut marks and stuff are going to tell me how to get the images perfectly registered, so that in our final book, when I open it up, these little creatures will be actually in the holes instead of, a quarter inch to the right or something. So all of this has to be super, super well lined up. You can see this is the right side of the book. Some parts have to be cut out. Some parts have to be, this strange jaggedy shape. And hopefully it'll all come together when it's finally bound. So this carving that I'm doing right now, I'm following the lines of my ink drawing that have been transferred onto the block, but it's a really organic shape, this kind of tree bark. So I'm also sort of letting the block do what it wants to do a little bit. The tools have their own shapes that they want to cut into the block. The nature of the material of the linoleum has its own kind of behavior that it wants to do. So I'm trying to not fight that as much as possible, so I can get a little bit of variation and a little bit of surprise for myself when I finally pull this off of the press. It won't look exactly like my ink drawing, but hopefully it will look even better.
So how do you transfer that drawing onto the block?
Yeah, so you'll notice that the image and the block I'm carving are actually reversed, like a mirror image. So I take the ink drawing and I will scan it and make a copy of it with laser toner. And then I put it face down like that on the block, and I take xylene, which is just a terrible, noxious solvent. And I use proper ventilation and proper, do it outside. But I'll take that on a paper towel and I'll just really gently rub it into the back. The xylene causes the toner on the copy to separate from the paper, and the toner just sort of, falls off of the paper and lands onto the block and stays there. And I have not really noticed the toner causing any issues with printing. If I print this in a certain color, it's not going to also pick up black toner. And it's a really good guide for my original image. Even so, it's not perfect. You can sort of see on this block how it's a little bit fuzzy, a little bit kind of looks like TV static. So that's why I always keep the image that I'm working on right here next to me so I can sort of reference if I'm not sure. Like this little image on the tree, this part of the tree looks a little bit spotty. I'm not really sure what's going on there. So I'll just look at my original image for that. Make sure I'm on the right track. Also, I have to keep everything really super tight, not only because the structure of this book relies on everything being in exactly the correct place, but also because I do a type of printing called reduction printing. Some call it a suicide block, not only because it makes you want to kill yourself, but also because the block itself is destroyed throughout the printing process. So the way that it works is this reduction print that I'm working on is going to be 2 colors, green and black. So right now I'm cutting out everything that I want to stay white. So everything I'm cutting now is going to be the white of the paper. Then I'll print it in green, and then I will take the same block and I'll cut more out of it, and everything I cut out in the second round will stay green, and then I'll print that block in black. So it sounds a little confusing, but the gist of it is that I'm using the same block to print multiple colors. And in order to do that, I'm having to take more and more material out every time that I want a new color to print. So at the end, when I print it, it will be multiple colors, but the final block is only capable of printing black. So if I ever wanted to print this edition again, I could only ever print the final black layer. I could not print the colors anymore. And sometimes the final block or black image ends up looking normal and legible and making sense. But sometimes, you know, if there's like just a little square of space that you want to stay black, then by the end, your block just has a little square of space. So it's not replicable, unfortunately, and the registration has to be perfect, which is a blessing and a curse. I love a good registration, but, you know, when it goes off, it's just maddening.
Yep.
Cool. Okay, so I have carved all my blocks, and now I'm here on the press because we're going to print today. This is a Vandercook Universal 1. It is a letterpress proofing press. This is the main type of press that I work on, these Vandercooks. And the block that I was carving the other day is currently locked into the press bed right here. So it's got all this wooden furniture around it, which is keeping it really tightly locked in there. These metal things are called coins, spelled with a Q, Q-U-O-I-N. And basically, I will take a metal key. Let's see where I put that bad boy. Somewhere around here. A metal key, and tighten and loosen these. And when I tighten them, they really squeeze the block in. So, you know, I can't move this at all, which is exactly what I want, because I don't want my block jumping around on press when I'm printing it. I want it to be perfectly registered, especially because the type of printing that I do, usually the type of relief printing, is reduction printing, which means that I have already printed this block once, actually, in green. I printed this last night. This is what it looks like in green. And now I'm going to print it in black, but I'm printing exactly over on the same block. So I've carved a little bit out. Some of this image is going to remain green, but not too much. And that means that when I print the black layer, it's going to have to land exactly where it did last night when I printed green. It's a little bit scary because you never know if anything was going wrong during the edition, if your block was moving at all, it's not going to work. If you didn't lock it up in exactly the way that I did yesterday, it's not going to work. There's a lot of like kind of scary little factors. But I've been doing this a while. I'm pretty confident that I can get it to register exactly again, fingers crossed. So we'll find out together if I got it to work. Let's see, first things first, we're gonna ink up the press. The press has 5 rollers on it. We've got these 2 big metal guys up here. This is the one I'm gonna apply ink to. Underneath we have 2 rubber rollers, and then way down in there we have a big roller, a drum, a metal drum. And that metal drum down in there is kind of the reservoir where most of the ink stays, and then these rubber rollers will distribute the ink onto the surface of the block. So let's go get our ink. So a lot of time ink when it's on the shelf will kind of form a little crusty skin on the top. And basically what I'm doing right now is just kind of skimming that skin off because I don't want any chunky pieces messing up my smooth ink. So it may look like I'm wasting ink right now, but all of this is kind of a boogery chunk. Ugh. I'm just gonna wipe that off. And now I can use the nice, smooth, silky ink underneath. Okay. Let's see. So it really doesn't take much. I'm gonna start off with that much ink. It's a really, small amount. And I'm gonna take it over here and apply it right here. Turn the press on. Just gonna give it a little thin line. And when I lower these rollers, it's gonna distribute it to all 5 rollers on the press. Give it a second to get all warmed up. This thing's a little bit stiff, so it'll take a second to get it hot and ready. Alright, so this is all warmed up, and since this image area is so big and flat, and it's going to be kind of thirsty for ink, I'm going to warm it up a little bit by tripping it. Tripping is generally when you roll over the image area, but it doesn't print. So it's going to apply a little thin layer of ink. You'll be able to see that there'll be black on the surface, but we're not going to print anything yet. Just going to kind of get this warmed up. You can see what a thin surface of black it applied. Letterpress in general puts down a really thin surface of ink. So for example, this stack that I printed last night, this is oil-based ink. I only printed it probably 12 hours ago, but you can see it's still super dry. I mean, it's bone dry. So the fact that letterpress puts down such a thin layer means that the drying is really not terrible. It's looking pretty good. This first print probably won't look great, but it is going to tell me the scariest part of letterpress printing, which is, did I register this properly? So if I registered it properly, most of this green area is going to come off of the press black after I print this. So let's see. I take the paper, and up here I have some grippers that are going to hold the paper in place where I want it. You can tell I'm really paranoid because I'm really making sure it's in there. Okay. So we're going to print. Let's see how I did. Alright, pretty good. So you can see, like I said, the print quality is not amazing on this first one, and this linoleum block is a little janky. But the registration looks fairly good. You can sort of see up here that it's a little bit off. I'm going to try another one to see if that's just a quirk of this print of how I fed it into the press. But really tightly registered areas like this right here, that's pretty much exactly what I'm looking for, where it looks like, it doesn't look like a Sunday morning cartoon where the green and the black are super off registered. It looks pretty passable, so if the entire edition prints like this, I'm not going to complain. But we'll see with the next print if, if this slightly off registerness is going to be the whole edition or if it's just this one. I think if it's going to be the whole edition, I'm not going to complain. I'm not going to try to fix the registration on it because this is looking pretty good. So I'm going to ink up the press a little bit more to try to get a deeper, darker black, and then I'm going to keep going with the rest of the edition.
So this one is pretty, it's just almost as perfect as you could ask for registration. You can see there's still a bit of a ghost of green coming up here in the tree, but again, I don't think I'm going to be able to get better than this. It's pretty good. I'm happy with it. All of these figures that have these little tiny areas of white, or those white areas are showing and not getting, registered out. So I'm pretty happy with it. I'm going to run the rest of the edition. I'm still probably going to ink it up a little more to try to get those blacks. A lot of the kind of saltiness, the kind of white spottiness in here is a glue issue with the block that I'm not going to be able to resolve. But luckily, most of this image area is hidden in the actual book anyway, so we're really just hoping that this little arch and this little arch look good, and they look pretty good, so we're going to keep going. Yeah.
Okay, I'm rolling whenever you want to
Okay.
let us know what you've been doing this week.
Sure. Okay, so all of our printing is finished and our book is bound. This is what the final prints look like. So the whole book is printed on these two sheets. We've got the right and left sides of the book here, the tiny little colophon on the bottom, and then we've got the title right here and the middle sheet right here. So that probably sounds confusing, but let's look at it in the actual book. So what the book looks like. So on the front, we have our title, Forest Gods. And when you open the book, we see our text on the right and left, and all the little creatures in the middle kind of go running off on either side. So you can see them if you only open one side, but it's impossible to see them, all of them, if you have both sides open. You can also sort of take a little peek if you look at it from the side, but I hope it works kind of in keeping with the theme of the poem, which is that, these creatures take off running if you, kind of a clumsy human, go tromping around in their woods. But if you're a little bit careful and you're a little bit sneaky, you can catch a glimpse. So if you look at this book, this front cover, that's this part here, this Forest Gods. This black strip is here in the middle between for and est, because when you open the book, this part has to be black. And here's the title over here. The middle sheet here is the middle part. These holes are cut into. And then, of course, this part, we've got the two sides. And this little part on the bottom here, the colophon, is on the back of the book. So this is the part that tells us where it was made. It's the part that I will sign and number. So I printed 50 copies of these. I actually printed 75, but I like to print some overage because I'm really picky. If something went a little bit off register or looks a little bit spotty, then I want to have a nice overage so that I can curate down the edition and make only the best 50. But that's our book. Took about 2.5 weeks. I'm still going strong. Now I'm going to spend the rest of my couple days in the residency just making little prints and getting ready for the next project.
Nobody judge me. Yikes. So the poem is, when leather-booted man tromps through the green, the forest gods all make themselves unseen. For though they wore the hawk, the snake, the fawn, his man alone will race the campion. So that is my kind of hypothesis.